Hey everyone, welcome back to our live Support Ops Hangout. I'm your host, Chase Clemens. I hope all of you Americans had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday last week, and for everyone else in the world, just make up a holiday to go along with ours. That's the best way to get some time off from work and gives you an excuse to eat some food and all that fun jazz. This week, Jeff Vincent is out, as you can, well, I guess if you're listening to the audio version of this, you don't know that yet, but you do know now that Jeff is out. He's at a swanky Christmas dinner tonight with the Wistia team. But we do have my other two favorite people in the world. First up, Chase Livingston from Automatic. Chase, how was your Thanksgiving?
Hey, it was good. I ate way too much, but that's kind of the point.
Also, flannel buddies for today. I mean, check that out.
That's right.
And then Carolyn from Buffer, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. I was just telling Chase Livingston that I got to have Thanksgiving dessert with another automatician. Is that the word you use? Okay. Yep. So they're slowly taking over the world, and they're all so darn nice.
What can we say?
So this week we are looking at handling sensitive security cases. And for this, I think our prime example here is going to be transferring ownership of an account, since all of us have, all of our products have specific account owners in them. So basically, a customer contacts your team, they request ownership of that of their account, their Buffer account or WordPress.com account or Basecamp account, whatever it is. And they do that because, you know, maybe the current owner left the company for some reason, or put a kind of harsher way, maybe they were fired, or I mean, there's a million different reasons, and I've seen them all around the current owner leaving and needing to be replaced by somebody else. And it's challenging and at times even scary, because there's lots of things that can go wrong in this situation. So we're going to talk about how to make it a little bit safer. We had a great email this week from Tim, and that's the one I kind of want to use to jump off today. Tim Dobson over at Bytemark. They're a hosting company. It happens all the time, he says, with hosting companies. They'll get an email saying something like, this account is in this development company's name, but their server contains my website, and they fired the developers, but they want to take over paying for their site. And you know, they were talking about it's tough. You've got to use good judgment. You have to have some good policies to fall back on. So you know, we're not the only ones that kind of have this problem. So let's start with Carolyn on this one. Carolyn, when it comes to your, like, we'll just go with like your Buffer for Business plan, right? Those have account owners. If I'm a team member on that account and I write into the Buffer team and say, hey, you know, John Doe is out of the company no longer, and we don't want to talk to him anymore, and he has nothing to do with us anymore, left on bad terms, all that kind of, you know, just worst case scenario that you can imagine. How would you handle moving that account from them over to me, since I'm, you know, like the CEO of the company, for instance?
Oh, you started with me. I've been so excited to hear everybody else's take on this one, because I think this one's so tricky. We don't have like a perfect system. I think we tend to evaluate each situation anew, which probably isn't ideal. But if someone already, so for the Buffer for Business specifically, if the person writing in is a team member, then we're a lot more likely to talk to them because they already are set up on the account. And if they have the password and the username, and like they have full access, we'll just let them. I mean, we'll just tell them how to change it. If the person already has like very clear access and is going through this, then it's kind of a no-brainer. The tricky part comes when they say, "I'm so and so. I'm brand new. I don't have the password." And what we'll sometimes do is have them set up a new account and reconnect the profiles, which is a huge pain in the ass. But what it means is that then we know for sure that that person had the username and password for the social profiles. So it's kind of a security check to at least show that they have some business doing this. There's also extreme cases. You know, sometimes if you've worked with an account really closely, then you might just be able to go, oh yeah, I know that this is real or something. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis, which I don't really think is ideal. But there's some, because there's like multiple account type things going on between Buffer and social. Sometimes we can like test to make sure that they really have access to what they should have access to in order to deserve access to this. So we'll sometimes do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, if I write in and you have me set up a new account, I reconnect with my Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and whatever other things you've got going on. At that point, I'm probably fairly certain like you're the right person. Otherwise, at least Buffer won't be alone in the boat because Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of them will have compromised passwords too. Yeah, so I like that. And just so we get a really clear picture here, when somebody sets up a new account, they're losing some history with the old account, right? They're losing some data tracking and things like that, but it's not like end of the world kind of thing, right?
They'll lose their settings, but yeah, if they bring over the profiles, then all the history and the schedules and everything the analytics and all the pending posts and everything comes with it. So it's more of a pain because of this actual setup process, but once you reset it up, it's very similar.
That doesn't sound like bad at all. Like I'm good with that. Yeah, I can't really pick that apart anyway. So Chase Livingston with WordPress.com, and just so all of our listeners know, you've got kind of two different, not products necessarily, but kind of segments. Yeah, WordPresses. So you've got WordPress.org, which is privately hosted. Our site runs on WordPress.org. If something happens to me and Chase Livingston wanted to become basically like the blog owner for the Support Ops site, he would have to go through Media Temple's owner change and all that. So we're looking at with him, we're looking specifically at WordPress.com because that is something that Automatic has to kind of control as far as the blog owners. So same kind of question over to you, Chase. Somebody has a blog about cats. I think Jeff mentioned cats one time on the show, so we're going to go with that. A blog about cats, and it was a partnership, and one of the partners had a falling out with the other partner over which cat was better than the other cat. I don't know, some weird whatever. Anyways, one of the partners is gone, and the other one, who is not the blog / site owner, wants to take ownership of the account. How do you approach that from the Automatic side?
Yeah, so I'm going to preface this by saying that I haven't worked account recovery tickets in quite a while. We have a few folks that do those pretty much just solely. That's what they do, is account recovery tickets, because we get so many of them. But in general, in that case, we're pretty strict about transferring site ownership, just because a public website like that, especially if it's a high traffic site or anything like that, is we don't want to just give access to anybody. Obviously, if you're an administrator already on the site, you can log into your administrator account already, then we're going to probably work with you a little more than if you're just somebody saying, hey, I need to get access to the site. We're pretty much not going to do that. But if you're an administrator on the site, there are some things we can work with you on. We may not make you the site owner, but you can possibly take over like paying for upgrades and things like that, which is essentially what the site owner is going to be doing. They're going to be the default person that's going to be paying for any upgrades you have. So we might be able to transfer those to you and that kind of thing. Or you could do an export of the site, and we could mark the kind of like what Buffer does, I guess. We would mark the original site as private. Then you basically just go create a new site, import all your content and the blog posts from that site, and you make a new one, so then you're the owner. And it's basically the same site. If you had a custom domain, obviously you'd just redirect that custom domain, and then it would be your site again, and nobody else would really know the difference. It would look the same to anybody who came to visit your site. So that's kind of how we approach it. A lot of times we have people who forget their passwords or something like that, and the only way basically we're gonna give them access to an account is if they can either reply to us from the account owner email. They can provide us with a PayPal transaction ID from an upgrade they purchased that can kind of count, or we can try to work with them in other ways, but those are kind of the top two things. And occasionally people will have like an activation URL from when they created their account, we send kind of an activation URL to activate each account that has a randomly generated string, and we can occasionally verify with that, but that's kind of an outlier that most people don't usually have. So most people keep receipts or have access to an email address that they just forgot they had used to sign up with or something like that.
Nice. I feel like with Basecamp we're kind of on the other side of all this. I mean, at least with Buffer and Automatic, you can kind of do either resyncing the account to a new account, bringing things in that way. WordPress, you can do the export-import, which I've done a billion times, and it works fine. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, like we mentioned, but that's okay when it comes to ownership changes. That's I think you can that stepping through a couple extra steps or whatever along the way is okay for those. For those that are curious with Basecamp, we don't have a way to export, so what's in your account stays in your account. Only the account owner can export into an HTML format, so you have to be the owner to get anything out as far as some kind of data export, that kind of thing. So for us, what we do is the very first step is we send a reply back to whoever's requesting ownership and let them know, hey, we don't step into these kind of things. We're not arbiters. We're not going to say who deserves to have the account or anything like that. What we are going to do is we're going to request confirmation of the account change from the current owner. So with Basecamp accounts, the current owner owns the account. So we'll go ahead and CC the current owner on that email thread so they know right away that somebody's requesting ownership and that they can give us permission. And as soon as we get that permission, then we're okay and we can move it over. 90% of the time, that's fine. Most people don't have a problem with that. It's an extra step, but again, security changes. Ownership changes. That's fine to do a little bit of extra security. The kind of fallback that we have there, if they aren't talking to the account owner anymore, and the owner used like a work email address, we'll tell them to go ahead and take over that work email address since that's their domain, and then we'll send a request for the ownership change to that email, and then they can reply from there. So, for that last 5% of weird cases, we've still got an option there, but we don't ever step in and say, yes, it's okay for you to take ownership of this account. So that's where we kind of defer a little bit on that one. Carolyn, with Buffer, that was one thing that I was thinking about when I was going through the steps that we have at Basecamp. So if I write in and request ownership of that account, does the current account owner ever get notified about that? Or are they looped in at any point along the way, or is it just the Buffer team having a dialogue with the person that's going to take over the account?
Yeah, I was nodding vehemently when you said that you CC the original person, because that just kind of alleviates a lot of the anxiety that the original email address is copied and nobody replies and says, whoa, don't do that. So yeah, we do that. Yeah, it's the other thing that's sort of interesting, and I was also nodding at Chase Livingston's comment about asking somebody to contact you through another way, is we have two-factor authentication for passwords. And so sometimes people will write in and say, I didn't get my text message, or I lost my phone, so my Google Authenticator doesn't work, or I don't have it, or blah, blah. And will you turn it off? And kind of defeats the purpose of two-factor if they have your password and they can convince you to turn it off, right? So yeah, what we'll sometimes do is have them tweet at us from the Twitter account that's connected, because it's kind of like what you said. If everything's already breached, then it's not that different. Them having access to Buffer is not that different than them having access to Twitter. So it's all bad to pile on, but that's kind of the best way we've figured out, other than, sometimes we can track down why the text message didn't go out or whatever. Yeah, sometimes it's a phone number that they thought that was different, or, sometimes you can figure it out. But yeah, if when we don't have those options, that's what we do. But yeah, we do try and like just loop in everybody all the time, because that seems to make us feel better, I guess, and maybe avoid potentially give somebody an opportunity to reply and say, wait, I'm confused.
Yeah, I think, and surprise, surprise, the buffer transparent team being transparent even in ownership changes. Yeah, I think, going ahead and bringing the account owner into the loop, there's no surprises that way. There's no he said, she said kind of moments that can happen then. There's no, our team, like the Basecamp team, isn't going behind the owner's back. They know up front exactly what's going on. With their account, it solves a lot of problems. And sometimes, I'm not saying always, but sometimes, maybe that 5-10%, something like that, you'll get a reply back from the account owner that's like, no, this is my account. Like, do not do anything with it. For us, a lot of times it'll happen where kind of the developer example we had earlier from that we were talking about with the hosting companies from Tim. So somebody will use Basecamp as kind of their project app working with clients, and they might have dozens of clients in there, and the client tries to take ownership of the account because they don't understand that they're just a client on that Basecamp. And looping the account owner in right away on those kind of situations just puts a stop to that really quick. So yeah, definitely recommend it. What about Livingston with Automatic? Is there any time that you go ahead and bring the current site owner into to the loop?
Yeah, that happens pretty often and usually pretty quickly. For one, if there's like I said earlier, a user who is another administrator on the account and they're asking for the site to be set to private or whatever, anytime we do that, we'll reply back to them and CC the account owner and let them know, hey, the site's been set to private. If you are the account owner and you're getting this email and that was done, in error, please let us know and we'll be happy to remedy that quickly for you. And then also, a lot of times we'll find if there was some bad blood between folks and, maybe somebody left the company that had access, maybe if we CC them and try to kind of mediate, then oftentimes we can get them to just transfer ownership rather than us having to do anything and go through all that trouble to have to try to verify ownership and that kind of thing. Sometimes they'll talk to us more than they might talk to a former employer or employee. I've had that happen a couple of times too. So yeah, usually trying to get in contact with the person and at least verify with them. A lot of times it works if that's possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, Dana Potter had a good question here about kind of more sensitive information when it comes to email threads. So you mentioned that a person could send you like a receipt to prove ownership of the account, or that they actually bought that upgrade or whatever it was, right? Is there any time you would ever ask for any other kind of what we would call more sensitive info via email? Something like the last 4 digits of a credit card, 6 digits, something like that?
For me, I can't think of any time when we would do that. I've never done that, and I don't know that anybody would do that. A PayPal transaction ID is about as personal as we get. We're obviously not sending passwords back and forth or anything like that. So yeah, that would not be the case.
Yeah, have you ever had a customer send you like a credit card number?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Yeah.
That happens all the time, or even logins and passwords, even to their site. Like, hey, will you take a look at this? And we always explain to them that that's not a good idea. If it's a password, obviously we encourage them to change that password that they sent to us, just in case that email would have been intercepted. Anything can happen these days. So encourage them to change that password. And if it's a credit card, we tell them that it might be, a good idea to cancel the card, or if you're not willing to do that, then at least keep an eye on it to make sure there's no, unauthorized or activity you don't recognize on there, because you sent it basically in plain text, via an unencrypted email.
Yeah, and Carolyn, same question over to you. Let's kind of move away from the ownership stuff because I think we're all pretty much in sync on that one. What happens if I send you, my billing has lapsed, I need to update the credit card information, I send you my credit card number. How does Buffer handle that?
Yeah, we try and, we'll say the same thing, like, oh, don't do that. What we will often do is sometimes, like, people have trouble entering it, and so sometimes we can do it on our end. So what we'll do is, like, hop on a Google Plus Hangout and have them read it to us. I don't know now that I'm saying that if that's really that secure either, but seems better than having it written. Yeah, we don't. I'm trying to think. We don't really use that to prove ownership. But yeah, I mean, we try to keep sensitive. It's funny, people do often send us passwords, and I guess maybe not every. I mean, I guess if you have not worked for a software company, you might not know that for the most part, the people who work on the support team can access any account without your password. But yeah, I don't think I've ever told anyone to change it after doing that. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I can think of so one time where I was a customer instead of the support person in a situation. My wife was having some problems with her WordPress theme, so we got in touch with the developer, and they said, "Oh yeah, it's the whatever you're seeing is a known bug. There was a problem with the theme upgrade kind of process, and to fix it, they needed the WordPress username and password, my server username and password." Which felt like a lot, especially if you're sending it over email. So when they do need stuff like that, because they were very adamant, they were like, "Look, we can't fix this without that," and it was enough of a problem, like it was over my head on how to fix that without just like reinstalling everything and spending, the better part of an afternoon doing a restore. So there was a great little app that I used, and I cannot remember the name of it. I'm going to find it and I'm going to put it in the show notes. Ian Landsman
One-Time Secret?
built it. One-Time Secret works, but there's another one from Ian Landsman that I forget what exactly the name is. File Vault or something like that? No, that's the Mac thing. Anyway, I'll find a link, put it in the show notes. And it's kind of the same thing as one-time password. It's, it's encrypted. When you send it over, you give them a password to decrypt that message, and they can see it. And then I immediately went back in, and I'm paranoid, so I changed the usernames and the passwords and all of it just to be safe. So, yeah, some of us... I don't really deal with personal info too much with a Basecamp account, but from a customer viewpoint, it felt like a lot when they were asking for that with my WordPress theme. So yeah, as long as you're recommending, like, sorry, we have to get this information, but we have to so we can fix it, but make sure you change all this stuff after we get done, I guess that's the kind of the best we could do on that one.
I will say, sometimes in Jetpack support, we do have to get site access, but we'll oftentimes ask them to create a new admin account just for our support team, since you can do that on WordPress, and then they'll send us that username and password. We'll do what we need to do, and then after we're done, we'll say, okay, now just delete that account, to prevent any unauthorized access or anything like that. And if we need server or FTP access, one of our developers will often just provide their SSH public key that you can basically install on the server, so you don't have to do username password authentication. You're just doing the SSH authentication. So that's a suggestion if you're ever doing any kind of server work or things where you can have multiple admins. Create a new admin account rather than giving out the one that you use all the time.
Yeah, nice. And just so I finally I say I found it. I didn't find it. Scott Tran found it for me. Pastevault.com. That's the one that I use, and it's really just really stellar.
I love Scott Tran.
Oh yeah. So side note there: if you're not following Support Driven and all the wonderful podcast episodes he's got going out, make sure you do that, because he's on top of his game over there on that one. So I was looking through some of the other notes that I talked about. Owners. We talked about sensitive info like credit card info, all that kind of fun stuff. Carolyn, with Buffer, are there any other situations you run into where it kind of is? So you mentioned the two-factor. That's a good one. Let's go back to that one real quick, because Basecamp has it. Does WordPress.com have two-factor? Yep. Okay, so we're all in the same boat again on this one. So, person has two-factor on their account. They lose their phone, or whatever whatever happens, and they write into the Buffer team and say, "Hey, look, I can't get the code that you're sending me for whatever reason. Where do I go from here?" So what would your team advise? I know you talked about it a little bit with like the Hangouts and all, but can you kind of walk us through again? What would happen in that situation for you to get me back into my account?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously, we would ideally like to get that person back into their account without us turning it off. So, if they have backup codes or If we can figure out why they're not getting the text message or anything, that's the best thing. Sometimes we aren't sure, or they've lost their phone or whatever. So yeah, what we would do is first have obviously make sure that the email address that they're emailing from is the same as the one on the account. Much better if we've talked to them before, and it's the same email address. If they email us from a different one, which happens all the time, we just ask people to email us from that one. If they and so we have some back and forths on that, and so we wouldn't just just in case they had spoofed the email address to make it look like it had come from, we won't just turn it off right away. We'll have one back and forth first to make sure that our reply that goes to the email address comes back from the real email address. And so then what we'll do is we'll ask the person to tweet at us or send us a direct message from some profile that's connected to the account, so that we know that they have access to those accounts outside of Buffer. And then if that's true, then we'll usually turn it off. We'll never change their password for them. If you really can't get into your account, we would do the thing where you set up a new account and steal the profiles back over. We would never just say oh, you don't have your password. If you're unable to get the email to reset it or whatever, we would send you through the other process. But if you have the password and you're emailing from the email address and you can tweet at us or send us a message from one of the profiles on the account, then we'll turn off two-factor. But we do it reluctantly.
Yeah, so Buffer is fantastic in the fact that you've got these social media accounts to fall back on. And just prove yourself that way.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my time at Emma. We didn't have two-factor, but we did have the concept of parent-child accounts. So there was an agency account, and sometimes those got really ugly because people would say this is my account, and we'd be well, it's technically a client of another account, and they would say well, I paid for XYZ services, they dropped off the map. Usually it's pretty ugly by the time they're contacting us, and in those cases we always stuck with either trying to mediate and get them to talk to each other, or at the end of the day, our client was the agency, not the agency's customer. So in those cases, when we didn't have any way to really choose and choose a side, we would always defer to the agency that was a client of ours. I think that's the only really relevant example I can think of about this kind of challenge. And in that case, it often didn't feel too great, but that was sort of the best thing we could decide to do.
Yeah, I think with a lot of these cases, we're trying to weed out everything that we can to make it as secure as possible, but at the end, it still feels a little weird, and I think it's okay that it feels weird because this is a security interaction. It's not just run-of-the-mill hey, help me change my photo profile or profile photo or something like that. Chase, you mentioned WordPress.com has the two-factor. Similar question over to you. I write in and say, hey, I've lost my phone. I can't get my two-factor authentication. How do you help get me back in?
So a lot like what Carolyn was saying Buffer does as far as email back and forth with the account under email. And then we don't have the social profile kind of thing to fall back on necessarily, so that like Buffer does. So it's basically the same kind of two major things, either back and forth with the account under email, or if you're going you can provide us with a a PayPal transaction ID. Occasionally we'll do that, but for the most part, especially with the two-factor auth, you're going to need to have access to the original or the account under email for us to either disable two-factor auth for you, or sometimes we'll send basically a single-use backup code. So basically one of their backup codes. We require when you enable two-factor auth to confirm that you've either printed out or saved your backup code somewhere. So once you we display those or give that file to you, and then when you hit continue, we ask you to input your first backup code, basically to kind of prove that you've got them somewhere that you can access. And And so if you're not able to do that, we show it again and really nag you to try to get those backup codes somewhere so that we don't have to go through this process at all if we can avoid it.
Yeah, that's the one thing Apple does pretty well. Gmail, Google related stuff does pretty well. They give you those backup codes, and like Google is a good example. They give you 10 different backup codes that you're supposed to print out or save somewhere, or if you're like me, throw it in one password. That way you have an automatic way back in without them having to like arbitrate in these, like, are you really who you say you are? That kind of thing. With Basecamp, Two-Factor 2, we do something similar. So if you can't get if you can't get the code through your phone for whatever reason, there are 3 security questions that you set up when you first set up Two-Factor. And if you give us exact answers to those 3, then you automatically get a recovery code to get you back into that account. If you miss one of those, it kind of falls into 2 categories. The first one, with the misses is sometimes like typos, not an exact match. Like maybe the question is, I'm going to use something really stupid here, like, who's your significant other? And in my case, Heather would be an answer for that. Maybe I was typing really, really fast, and I flipped the T and the H in Heather, and that's why it kicked back and said, we need to check that one. So if we see like a typo thing like that, we'll just go ahead and send a recovery code. If your answers are completely off the ball, like you're nowhere in the neighborhood of the right answer, or if we see that you're taking a long time to answer them, we keep track of how long it takes you to answer that question. If we're looking at 45 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes for you to answer that question, that's throwing some red flags on us. And at that point, we want to have some kind of video chat, video call with you, so we can look at you, look at your face, compare it to the profile photo that we have for you, and see if you are who you say you are. That works 99% of the time. There's that 1% that sometimes, for whatever reason, doesn't. They're in the middle of Timbuktu and they can't really get internet, which I wonder why you're using Basecamp at that point. But I guess it's good that Basecamp works in Timbuktu. So on situations like that, we usually ask you information about like what projects you're part of, who else is on your account, is there an account owner that we could talk to confirm that you are who you say you are, you're locked out, that kind of thing. We kind of go overboard on what happens when you can't get that code, but I think that's kind of what each of us would want anyways. We would want to make sure that you checked several times along the way. That you are who you say you are when you're using those. So that's kind of what we do. I can't think of a single time where I've ever turned it off for anybody, just because the steps that we go through, we're pretty confident in who you are, and we send you that recovery code, and you can use that to get in. It's not that we ever turned it off, but that's kind of how we handle it there. Yeah, so we're kind of at the 30-minute mark on this one, so let's kind of wrap it up. Anything else, any other kind of sticky security situations that either of you want to kind of throw out before we wrap up?
I was just going to agree with you that I think people tolerate and even appreciate being sent through many hoops to get access to their account, because it's sort of like the if we'll do it for you, we'll do it to you thing. Like, I think it's totally. I'm always surprised, but not surprised. I just appreciate that people are so tolerant of what we ask them to do in these situations, because I think people know that it has to be this way. So I think it's good to show that you mean it.
Yeah, that's one of those where, especially if you're going through the trouble of setting up some kind of two-factor authentication, you know that there's going to be extra steps involved if you can't use that two-factor authentication to get in. That's just one of those where this is the internet, this is the day and age that we live in, this is how it has to happen. And the amount of times where I've been inconvenienced by two-factor are far, far less than the times where I've been thankful that I had that enabled on my account, whether it be somebody trying to get into my Gmail account or Basecamp or whatever. Having it as an extra safeguard there to make sure they can't get in is worth whatever hassles I have to go through to get back in when I lose a code. So this is what we thought about all of the fun world of security / sensitive kind of situations that we run into with customers. Let us know what kind of sticky situations you run into. This is one of those kind of shows where I really want to get out the word about how different companies are handling this, because I think that's how all of us can kind of level up and be a little bit better when it comes to the security side. So let us know, supportops.co/question, get you over to where you can drop us a line and either ask us a question about something related to all this, or let us know how your specific team handles those kind of situations. So that brings us to my favorite part of each and every week. Jeff's gone. I can do the drum roll, I guess. I don't know. Here we go. Close enough.
I was trying to help you out there, but I couldn't get it fast enough.
I like the homemade version anyway.
There we go.
It's this week's shoutouts. These are the things that are making us happy, so happy we want to shout them out from the rooftops and the mountaintops to let you know you should be doing this thing, buying this thing, watching, reading, whatever it is. This is where we kind of just give praise where it's supposed to be. So we got one kind of mini shout out earlier with Scott Tran over at supportdriven.com. Again, go listen to his stuff, read his stuff, because it is fantastic. We'll start with Chase Livingston. What's your shout out for this week?
So I took the plunge and went and saw Interstellar last week, and I was very impressed. I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to spoil it. The ending wasn't the greatest necessarily, but overall, I thought the movie was pretty phenomenal. The effects and everything were awesome. The score that Hans Zimmer did really kind of made the movie too. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'd recommend going to see it in the theater. I don't think it's going to be the same, on your relatively smaller TV at home on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. So check it out in the theater if you get the chance, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Go see it in the theater, and the bigger the screen, the better. If you can get it like in an IMAX or whatever.
I should have done IMAX, but I didn't.
And
then, Carolyn, what are you shouting out this wonderful week?
I'm shouting out, I don't have a book this week. We just had an interesting thread going on. This isn't really, I didn't discover it. I thought I would share it. Kind of in the inboxes on Cyber Monday. There's been, there's so many emails about buying and that kind of thing. And Everlane, I think it was Joel who sent it around, or maybe Leo, and several other people commented about some similar ones in their inboxes. Everlane sent around an email that basically said, the last several years what we've done is turned our site completely off on Cyber Monday to sort of protest the concept of just buying so much and spending so much money, especially the day after you give thanks for what you have, and all your blessings, and how the important things in life aren't things. But this year what they're doing is they are having their site live, but all proceeds are going to support the people who work at the factory in China. So it was just a really cool email. Definitely stood out among a lot of the other emails in the inbox. So I can send you a screenshot of it, Chase, for the support, for the notes. But yeah, it was just kind of a feel-good thing, and definitely not just sort of protesting the concept, but also the fact that they're drawing attention to some things that they'd like to improve, and just definitely want to give them a shout-out.
Yeah, I love seeing, because we get bombarded with Cyber Monday emails and Black Friday emails and everything else, it's fun and refreshing to see a company that does it just a little bit differently. Whether it be in pursue a kind of noble aspiration like Everlane, or if it's on the complete other side of the spectrum with Cards Against Humanity. I don't know if y'all saw that one, but box of shit, literally, for $15. It was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. Anyway, my shout-out for this week goes to a show that I've been watching religiously and reading comic books for a while. I don't think I've given them a shout-out yet, but if not, if I have, just overlook it, or just realize that's how awesome it is. The Walking Dead just wrapped up its mid-season finale last night. Side note, I don't like mid-season finales. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. But if you got to do it, then theirs was a pretty good one. Just a really great way to kind of wrap up the first half of the season. A lot of really great character development, which is not something you see a lot of in TV nowadays. It was just a really, really great writing, great acting, great job done by the Walking Dead team for this first half of the season. So kudos to them. And if you're not watching the show, make sure to go out and catch up on it. So that and all the other ones will be up at supportops.co shortly in the show notes. Make sure to check them out. Next week we're back. We've got 2 more episodes before the end of the year, so you get to get all of your feel from our wonderful thoughts and our team here. We'll be back next Monday, same bat time, same bat channel, 5:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 Eastern. Beyond that, until we see you again, have an awesome week.